We,
Sohnia,
and Jaanuni, are a couple of pals studying science in undergrad. We are not professionals.
though every episode is meticulously researched, mistakes do happen.
If you notice that anything,
And we mean anything.
we state is inaccurate, please let us know.
Your comments, suggestions, and queries are important in furthering our personal and audience's understanding of science.
Thanks for being a part of this discussion.
We appreciate you.
We really do.
Bop bop, beep it up bop.
Hello, friends. Sohnia shuffles over.
Her skin. Anyways, hi.
That was Sohnia.
Yep, it's me.
This is Jaanuni.
And welcome back to another episode of Beaker Bros.
We're actually in the same place for the first time in a while.
Yeah, it has been a heckin' long time, but here we are.
Woo!
Do-do-do.
In case you guys haven't realized, this is another episode of Beaker Bros.
Yes, where we drink out of beakers.
Because we're bros.
Clink.
Kalink, I just have water. Sohnia has a Spider-Man mug.
Yeah, my beaker broke a while ago.
Yeah, so we are not really drinking out of beakers.
But you know, we can still say it to uphold the nostalgia.
Yep, we'll get beakers, don't worry. We'll bring them back.
We'll invest in them again.
Mm-hmm.
Do you still have your beaker?
Mm-hmm.
You do? Okay.
I don't think I brought it here, though.
Oh.
Or did I?
Well, we'll figure that out later.
Yeah.
Anyways, do you want to start off by introducing this episode?
Yes, this one is, I think most people can relate.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you're a university student or a 70-year-old living out your retirement on a boat
Yes.
or a house.
Or house or wherever you are.
Yeah, at one point or another, you probably consumed some booze, or in other terms, alcohol.
Exactly. And in fact, in many cultures, it's actually customary to consume, alcohol with your meal or whatever, and represents thousands of years of rich history.
However, the past few months of quarantine have definitely opened my eyes to how dismissive the media is to recognizing the ramifications of addiction.
Mm-hmm.
Until recently, I had no idea of the extent of how many people had resorted to alcohol abuse to suppress feelings of loneliness and depression that were heightened during quarantine. That's one thing we talked about, like in our first episodes of the Beaker Bros. So, a little connection.
Yeah, and considering how enshrined alcohol is, not just here in Canada, I guess, but all over the world, we feel that it's pretty worthwhile to take a moment to recognize beyond the superficial stuff that you learn in PE or your physical education class, and really dive into the toll that alcohol takes on your body from a more scientific and social perspective.
Definitely going back to the point where you were saying, like, what we learned in, like, PE, gym class, or whatever, I always found it weird that in school, the curriculum never really went beyond explaining the superficial effects of consuming alcohol.
Yeah, because we only talk about these superficial effects rather than, or not just that, but also, like, sort of statistics, like saying 20% of X people do this or blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you don't really foster, like, critical thinking, autonomy, and inquiry when talking about the subject of alcohol consumption. Like, it's the whole idea of that, like, abstinence is the best way to prevent alcoholism and addiction. But again, going back to what we were saying before, considering how enshrined it is in our culture, that may not be the most effective way to go about talking about this sort of stuff.
And definitely, like, learning about, the science aspect of it can help you in going about, like, how to consume alcohol in a safe manner if you do choose to consume alcohol. And again, like you said, like in school, it's always about, like, don't drink, don't do this, don't, right? But realistically, that's not always what people are choosing to do.
Yeah.
And that's fine, because alcohol has been, like you said, in, like, past history, it's been really rich in history. It's a social, thing people do as well. Mm-hmm. So, again, like, saying don't is not really, not saying it's not an option. Like, you're not getting peer pressured into it, but people don't choose people don't choose not to consume alcohol, so I think it's better to teach, like, safer ways to consume alcohol and knowing your limits and stuff.
Yeah, and to emphasize one point, though, this isn't necessarily a comment that's geared towards, like, criticizing the educators and the teachers that are, you know, educating students about alcohol consumption. But considering the fact that North America has some of the highest overdose rates in the entire world, it's worthwhile, I guess, to start reconsidering how we educate young people about substance abuse and alcohol consumption, and really evaluate the resources that are available to students and for those who, you know, are seeking help.
I like that point. Like, I heard you talking about, like, substance abuse and stuff, because I think what's another, like, aspect that kind of gets overlooked is, like, definitely when you get into that, like, age that it's legal to drink, and then you, from a social aspect, people are, like, drinking alcohol or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
The consumption, like, the amount people are consuming can be overlooked and normalized as being just, like, you're in university, you're in college, you're in your 20s, and that's normal, right?
Yeah.
But there's times where it's actually, like, borderline substance abuse.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really important, again, like you said, to evaluate, giving young individuals the resources they need for seeking help.
Yeah. And again, not just young people, older people.
Yeah.
University student, or that 70-something-year-old that we were talking about at the beginning. But that's a really good point. Thanks for bringing that up. But with that being said, what do we want to dive into first?
I guess, alcohol and, like, what alcohol is. Because we use that term so, like, just alcohol. But what is alcohol? Like, I know from our like, perspective, we're thinking of organic chemistry and, like, all that stuff. But any other, individual that's not, you know, what's it called?
Like, familiar with it in that sort of capacity?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So,
Sorry, I just completely blanked out.
All good. So to start off, alcohol is the common name for a molecule.
Mm-hmm.
Ethanol.
Has an OH group.
It has an OH group. A functional
group.
Yeah. And alcohol is a psychoactive drug that acts as the main active ingredient in alcoholic beverages. So regardless of what you're drinking, I guess, if it has that alcohol molecule, you're consuming an alcoholic beverage. And once this alcohol is consumed, it passes through your stomach, through your digestive tract, and makes its way into your bloodstream.
I was gonna add, that alcohol is also a depressant to our bodies.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
So some of the visible symptoms, like you're used to seeing, like, someone who's drunk, it's like slurred speech, loss of coordination, falling, loss of inhibition, passing out. Like, all of these are side effects.
Absolutely.
As a result of our brain cells communicating at a slower rate. So just adding on to that.
Oh, it's a really good point, and thanks for bringing that up again. But a fun fact, though. So have you ever heard that saying where, like, it's good to eat something before you drink?
Yeah.
A lot of people think that's because if you have something in your stomach, whatever food's in there will absorb the alcohol, so you're not necessarily having that bad of an effect later on. The reason why, though, it's important to eat something before you drink, it's because during digestion, there's this little component called the pyloric sphincter, which basically acts as a doorway between your stomach and the small intestines.
Yeah.
And when you eat something and you have something in your stomach, this sphincter closes. And because it's closed, only a fraction of the alcohol you consume will enter your bloodstream compared to when it's open on an empty stomach.
Oh.
Yeah.
See, that kind of makes sense. Like, whenever there was family gatherings, and my dad would always make sure, like, he ate before he drank or whatever, and I just thought, I don't know, like, I guess he's hungry. But it makes sense. Like, after, like, a while, like, you would see, I'm just saying, like, you see those brown uncles that are kind of all over the place or whatever. It's because they didn't eat, I guess.
I guess so. Or they may have, one thing that we'll talk about a little bit later is they may have fewer enzymes that allow the processing of alcohol, so that may...
Is that also associated with, like, Asian flesh that people... Is that the same enzyme? Or is that a different enzyme?
That's a different enzyme, but, like, it sort of has, like, a similar affiliation.
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, that enzyme that you're talking about, it's more prevalent in Asian populations, which is why it, like, promotes the redness that you get in the cheeks and
like, all the hives and all that fun stuff.
Exactly.
Wow.
But anyways, so from here, once it's consumed, the alcohol will travel to your organs, primarily interacting with your liver and your brain. However, because of proximity, this alcohol will hit the liver first.
Ooh.
Yes. So here the alcohol is broken down or metabolized, if we want to use fancy words, using these little doodads called enzymes.
Enzymes.
Yes. And first, the enzyme ADH. Do you remember what ADH stands for?
Antidiuretic hormone.
There you go. ADH metabolizes alcohol into a toxic molecule called acetaldehyde.
Acetaldehyde.
It's toxic. And then another enzyme called ALDH will metabolize the acetaldehyde into a non-toxic molecule called acetate.
ALDH is acetaldehyde. Why can I? Aldehyde dehydrogenase. Why did I struggle with that?
Anyways, so acetate can be metabolized even further into water and carbon dioxide, which is expelled from your body when you pee or when you sweat, I guess. Well, not really when you, well, kind of, I mean the water, but like more so when you pee.
Yeah.
In larger quantities. However, if you drink too much too fast, your liver can't necessarily process all the alcohol that's being consumed, causing your blood alcohol content, so your BAC, to rise. And when alcohol interacts with your brain at really high concentrations, or not just high concentrations, but like above normal concentrations, I guess, it suppresses the excitatory neurotransmitter glutamate, and increases the inhibitory neurotransmitter GABA. GABA. And did you ever watch the show Yo Gabba Gabba as a child?
Yo Gabba Gabba.
It's like these weird, I don't know what it's
Are
about.
they
the little shapes?
Yeah, okay.
That's what I think of whenever I hear
Yes.
GABA. I don't really know what the show's about, but I just know it's a children's show and they got weird little figures doing things. But anyways.
GABA. Back to GABA.
Back to GABA. This makes neurons much less responsive, which ultimately produce the effect we call drunkenness. And in addition to poor coordination and inhibition, alcohol increases dopamine levels and endorphins, creating this feeling of euphoria and pleasure.
I actually have something. Okay, so talking about GABA, so like you said, by increasing the effects of GABA, responses in the brain are decreased. So like I mentioned how it was a depressant earlier. So this low neurotransmitter actually results in like the slurred speech. Also our limbic system is involved in emotional responses, which is also showed by alcohol, resulting, like you mentioned, in the loss of inhibition experience while getting drunk. You mentioned something about feelings of pleasure and euphoria, right?
Yeah. Because of the increased levels of dopamine and endorphins. Yes.
So that's like the initial euphoric effects of alcohol, right? Because of like the dopamine being released from the reward system in the brain. Dopamine, in case people didn't know, is the feel-good neurotransmitter, and it's involved in the feeling of pleasure, like Sohnia mentioned. Dopamine release is also thought to be one of the mechanisms that drive addiction. So in addition to dopamine, drinking alcohol initially releases serotonin, which is another neurotransmitter involved in being happy and calm.
Yeah.
Just want to add that little fun fact.
We love the detail.
Yeah.
So once all these neurotransmitters and, excitatory / pleasurable / endorphic feelings are being brought about, at this point, your body will start doing what it can to get rid of this stuff, which is why you'll likely feel the need to, go to the washroom very often.
Why people say don't break the seal or something.
Exactly.
I never understood that. I really never did.
Because once you start going, you'll keep going.
God.
But, yeah, so as your liver begins to metabolize the alcohol even faster than the brain's absorption, this is when the feeling of drunkenness starts to fade.
Oh.
Okay, so because of individual differences that, I guess, impact your body's way of metabolizing and reacting to alcohol, drunkenness will actually vary from person to person, which is an interesting thing. That's why some people may think they're, better at consuming alcohol. Not better necessarily, but some people are
higher tolerance or something.
Yeah, some people have a higher tolerance. Some people are deemed lightweights because they don't necessarily
one-shot wonders.
One-shot wonders. If you don't have enough enzymes in your body's way of processing the alcohol is different from someone else's, that will ultimately affect, the feelings of drunkenness that you experience.
Does it depend on how much you weigh and stuff?
That could have a factor to it.
Okay.
How much you weigh, how much body fat that you have on you can also affect it. There's
like the more body fat you have,
Yeah.
the better you can tolerate alcohol?
Or
Or
may-
like the effects?
Yeah, because it takes, the more, to an extent, that's
Okay.
a contributing factor. But then again, if you have less of those enzymes in your liver that allow you to process the alcohol as fast as someone, there's so many contributing factors
That's
to it,
true,
but
yeah.
that could play an
Okay.
influence to it.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
No, that does.
Okay, yeah.
It's a matter of you don't have enough enzymes.
Truly. But yeah, so going back to that example though, it really does depend on a multitude of factors, like how much you weigh and the amount of blood in your body, all these enzymes, but even genetic differences such as naturally having high endorphin sensitivity or variations in GABA and glutamate activity can also make you more susceptible to craving the addictive highs associated with drunkenness. So going back to what you were saying before, some people have a higher propensity for these, what were you saying before? You were saying something along the lines before of like
people have higher tolerances to alcohol?
Yeah.
Or like they're able to, like the effects of alcohol.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just to connect it back.
Okay.
Sorry, there was a delay to that, but it's okay. But what's even more interesting though is that when consuming alcohol and having repeated exposure to these variations in dopamine levels and all that kind of stuff, it could actually cause. So when all of this alcohol consumption is done in chronic excess, so not just done repeatedly, but at a large, significant quantity over time, this behavior can become characterized as AUD.
Which is known as alcohol use disorder.
There you go. And it's these sort of psychological and physiological outcomes that lead those living with AUD to suffer from anxiousness, anger, depression, and more. And to suppress these behaviors, those suffering from alcohol abuse disorder feel obligated to resort to a vicious cycle of perpetual drinking, despite, the adverse social and occupational or even health consequences they may be experiencing.
The education, like the curriculum, like substance abuse and all that stuff. How, again, it's more of like, don't have alcohol rather than here are the resources to deal with substance abuse or alcohol use disorder. Okay, so you were talking about like alcohol use disorder, like how alcohol can lead to that.
Yeah.
So there are short-term and long-term effects of alcohol use on your body and your brain. So the short-term effects of consuming excess alcohol can result in like a lapse of judgment, loss of coordination, nausea, vomiting, blacking out, slurred speech, and impaired memory. So you may have seen someone like that or not, like it happens, right? But prolonged use of alcohol is actually toxic to the neurons and can result in neuron death.
Yeah.
So continued use of alcohol can cause like a shrinkage of the brain, which is kind of scary.
Yeah.
Which can lead to ataxia, which is a degenerative disease of the nervous system, which is irreversible. Why can I not say that? Irreversible. There we go. Yeah, again, back to your whole thing, how if you have dependency on alcohol, it is definitely important to seek professional help, and abrupt withdrawal from alcohol can cause like seizures. So that's just a fact.
Wait, repeat the last thing again. Abrupt, like if you stop immediately,
it can cause seizures, and that's like, it's not good.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I guess that goes back to the point where, like, for those that do live with addiction, it's important to have like resources and support behind you, because even though you may want to stop, there may be things that sort of inhibit you from doing it safely.
Yeah.
Like negative health consequences, I guess, that may make it harder to stop.
Again, back to the whole needing resources, educating like individuals from a younger age, and all that stuff can definitely help decrease these the stats and the effects that we see with overdose and alcohol consumption abuse.
Yeah, I think one thing though that's really come up in recent years that's been a real benefit to those that are living with alcohol abuse disorders or addiction is how we characterize alcohol abuse. Before, it used to be more of a, like, it's your fault, you're doing to this self, you have control. But now these sort of addiction disorders are really seen as diseases.
Like medical diseases,
medical diseases. And because you're able to classify them as such, like under the DSM-5 or whatever, like you're able to receive legitimate help from rehabilitation services and stuff like that.
Like there's like the whole controversy of like, is alcoholism a choice or is it actually a disease? Right? Like again, there's controversy even in the medical field, right? Like there's different professionals of saying one thing or the other, but I want to say the majority, like the consensus is that alcohol is a disease, it's a disorder, it's not necessarily a choice.
I mean, there are factors that, like, from the beginning, I guess, not to say, like, that it's entirely to blame someone for their circumstances or something like that, but there is an element to it where it is, like,
there is a genetic component, too.
Yeah, there's a genetic component, there's, like, there are factors that, like,
it's like the diathesis stress model, right? Like, you have a predisposition to it, right? And it depends on the number of triggers and stress that you experience in your life that causes it to.
Look at you using MCAT terminology.
We love it. But yeah, I think that's a good way to wrap it up.
Wrap up this episode. Once again, thank you very much Sorry. Once again, thank you very much for listening to another episode of Beaker Bros.
Thank you.
As always, stay tuned for the following week.
Bye.
Bye.